Click the links. You join the channel here or over on Subscribestar. So I don't know what Afro Hobbit's version this is up to. Probably 18 or something. I've done so many videos on Rings of Power, and I don't even think I can use that in the title anymore because someone would look and go, "That's vaguely offensive." And you go, "Why is that offensive?" I don't know, because it has the word Afro and Hobbit in it. So which one of those words is offensive, and why is it offensive if they combine them together? I don't know, but I mean, you have people looking for offense. I'm pretty sure they'll find it. So Amazon ignores the Rings of Power focus group because the focus group didn't like Rings of Power. Okay, so we're just going to ignore that and go ahead anyway. Good luck to you. So curative versus transformative. Do you like the story, or are you only using it to push globalist propaganda? Guess which way modern Hollywood is going. First of all, season 2 won't save them. Not at all. But by season, I think it's 2 years from now, so they're hoping, oh, thank God, people will just forget about how bad the first season was. Like, so are you going to improve season 2? Not a chance in hell. Okay, then like you're gonna have even fewer people on board with season 2. There's to be zero hype around it. But the thing is, by season 3, the budgets will be cut. They can't cancel it because it would be too big of an L for their side. It's a tool of propaganda. They have to keep it going no matter the failure. They know the shill media will call it a success no matter what because it's diverse. Well, is that good? It's diverse. It, that's not an answer, but to the wokerazis, those are synonymous terms. They're already calling it a smash hit. It's in the first line. Amazon has a smash hit. Are you sure about that? Would you like to revisit this in 4 years? And it's like they never did. They never come back to their old articles and goes, "Hey, remember when you said that Wheel of Times was to be a smash hit? Yeah, it wasn't." Or Rings of Power. Yeah, that was a bomb too. Or She-Hulk. Yeah, you said it was a smash hit. Yeah, what happened to that? Oh, I guess we were wrong. Every time we were wrong. They know it's not a smash hit. Everyone working at these like Kotaku, CBR, Comic Book, all these kind of sites, or even people working on the show itself, they know, they know it's not a smash hit, and especially the people who are crunching the numbers, they're very well aware. The funny thing is, if Warhammer 40K sticks to the origin story, indeed, if they even make it in the first place, I hope they will, then that would be a solid hit, which would make them look bad because it would clearly show that people want you to stick. They want curative stories, not transformative, globalist propaganda stories. Where Wheel of Times and Rings of Power are they're horrible. The thing about Wheel of Time, Rings of Power is if you looked at it from a distance, everything looks great. The sets, camera, sound, costumes, hair, makeup, everything technical looks fantastic. Then you listen to it and you start projectile vomiting all over your keyboard because sometimes cringe will do that to you. Is it just too hard not to replace the European characters with non-Europeans? Apparently that is asking the impossible. It kills, and somehow it offends them even to discuss these things openly. It kills the story. They know it kills the story. Why does it kill the story, bigot? Because it's not the original story? Oh, you got me there. You got me there, Nazi. They know it kills the story. They also know that most people won't say anything because it's not politically correct, and on mainstream social media, like YouTube, you'll eventually get kicked off, which is, of course, only a matter of time. Watching the first bit of Wheel of Time, as I did last night, go try to watch the first 10 minutes of it. It's on Amazon. It's on a bunch of other sites. It's unwatchable, just literally the first 10 minutes. Even for the sake of a review, there's a bar scene where it's a bar or a what do you call it, pub scene, and it's kind of vaguely Lord of the Rings pub scene with the hobbits, and it's like, oh, it's a based on some kind of European pub, and then you see, oh, United Colors of Bennington checklist, and then this, like, the feeling you have for the story, it just sucks the wind right out of your sails. You go, why bigot? Why bigot? Like, can we discuss this without ad hominem? No, they literally cannot. You go, because it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel organic. It feels like some Weinstein in Hollywood is just going through a checklist. You go, like, how are these people all together? Why do you have Africans and Europeans and Asians and Indians all in one small European village pub? How does that work? I don't have an answer for that, but I know you're istophobic for asking. No, I don't believe in any of those terms. Those are control terms used by cultural Marxists to compel behavior through fear. They're not organic words. I've been saying that often on Twitter, hopefully making some people think a little bit. So watching the first little bit of Wheel of Time is unwatchable, even for the sake of review. None of it makes sense. I mean, it's painful to watch. Like 10 minutes and you just turn it off. Like even Rings of Power was better than Wheel of Time. I think if you watched all of it, you'd turn into one giant bleeding vagina. I had to pop on the original Lord of the Rings to wash the evil out of my mouth, which tastes a lot like cringe. I'm watching I watched the 3 hour 48 minute version, right, which is actually just a 3 hour and 20 minute version, but they have 28 minutes of credits at the end because there's so many people in it. Where he changed the introduction from the Fellowship of the Ring version I'm familiar with from 20 years ago. It's a much different introduction. I'm not sure it's better, but if you've already seen the original so many times, it's like he did change the intro quite a bit, which is cool because it shows you they have so much footage left off that they can include extended versions and different versions and all kinds of things. It shows the small Hobbit village of the Hobbit people, who are all one peaceful people. The story connects with you. It makes sense. Where in Wheel of Time, you look at that and you're like, this none of this makes sense. And I know that if I ask this, I'll just have people like dogpile me on social media, and like it's just deflection and ad hominem. And yikes, my guy, touch grass. Yikes, go outside, friendo. Compared to Wheel of Time or Rings of Power, the original is like Shakespeare. Instead of what it is, it's just a very good adventure tale that was originally kind of written more for kids, but kind of morphed into something else. The story of hobbits makes sense where all the hobbits are of the hobbit tribe. They're all one people. But for globalists, this peace and tranquility of one people is the greatest insult. They see something by and for and with European people, and they know they have to destroy it. That four-panel meme where at the last panel you just go, you have to have the flamethrower and go, no, we have to gatekeep. And they do. They destroy everything they touch. But no, we don't need to touch grass. We're not Chad outrage. Yikes, my guy. Bad take, friendo. There is nothing to be outraged or incel, small peen. What are they have a checklist of insults, but that doesn't make the story good. Those are ad hominems. There's nothing to be outraged about because Rings of Power isn't Lord of the Rings. It's a plastic F doll that someone is trying to tell you is just as good as a human. The laughable thing is that they're trying to get kids to associate Lord of the Rings with this Amazon abomination. This is a plastic doll that pees on your leg, insults you, and demands payment. At least with the various versions of Lord of the Rings, you knew that you were getting something as close to genius as you could get at the time. So this interview with this idiot at Amazon, the original guy got hashtag Me Too. And the thing with the Me Too is like this guy who was the original Amazon Studios guy. There were a lot of guys who don't. They're in their 40s, 50s, probably more so in their 50s on up. They don't know the way of the world, where you can't mentor women, you can't work with women, you can't talk to women, you can't have women in an office and unescorted. You have to take the Mike Pence method. You can't even talk to them, joking around with them. No, no, that all that is like this is the new way of the world that some people are well aware of, and like the Keanu Reeves no touching rule, the Mike Pence never be alone with one rule. They can get mad at you for that, but they can't destroy you for that. And as it turns out, the consequences is like, oh, men aren't mentoring women anymore because like 20% of the reason men are mentoring women is just to find a new wife. It's like that's part of the human experience. So as it turns out, it's like no, you're not going to mentor any women because you can't be alone with them, can't go out to dinner with them, you can't go out to lunch with them, can't do anything with them. And what happens is like, oh, we'll have all women directors. I mean, if they can define woman working on a show, it's like, oh, well, that's not a very good show because there's too much female energy, which I know to them is probably offensive, but I'm just keeping it 100 with you. Um, so it's like those. Oh no, the consequences of my actions. Yeah, what did you expect would happen? Um, so the interview with this idiot at Amazon, his vibe is entirely different from Peter Jackson in the 2001 films. In the original interview, he said he was going to stick as close as possible to the books and his entire directing crew because he knew that that was the highest honor because the books, the source material, are what drew people into the material in the first place. Making the best movie means making the movie in accord with the book because the book is everything. That seems to escape modern Hollywood. People are there to see Tolkien, not whoever is working at Amazon Video. We don't give a damn about them. They're just the vehicle to help carry the original story. So this Amazon guy, who sounds like a giant idiot, says none of that. He says he knows that not everyone is going to like this new version, which is an insane thing to say, but in the whole interview they don't discuss the race swapping or that being one of the reasons for the failure. I guess the the misandry and the political stuff in there. Hey, open borders for Rings of Power world. It's like that is not in the spirit of the original trilogy at all. How do you square that? Oh, we don't. Okay, but we'll call you istophobic for noticing it. So they knew before they made Rings of Power it would suck. And then when they tested it out with audience, the audience said it sucked. Some of the audience said they enjoyed the race swapping because it's, I guess, part of the humiliation ritual to conquer people. But that's not a reason to watch a movie, and it shows they're not true fans because fans want to see the original story. And more importantly, from a financial interest, you know that there's not enough of those these pox audience, like the percentage of the pox audience who are into this original European mythology story, who only want to see it race swapped. It's like that's not enough to sustain an industry at all. I can't imagine Peter Jackson saying that he would understood if people didn't like his version, because they would only not like it if he strayed from the original story. But Amazon is taking the story you enjoyed and removing the very people who made the story in the first place. And the mainstream media is totally on board with this because this is the stage of cultural Marxism we're in, where people have to pretend to like this cringe, but they don't actually have to pay for it. In a sane country, the media would laugh their asses off at Rings of Power and openly call it what it is, dog poop. But if they do, Twitter will call them istophobic and they'll just get fired. That's the cold, hard truth. So everyone in the media ignores the most important issue about why this show sucks so bad. That's the level of clown world. It's not even politically correct to discuss the cultural Marxism that is ruining everything. Nobody in the media will just come out and say, yeah, it's not acceptable to remove European people from a European story. Why would it be? European white lives matter, friendo. European lives matter. European people matter. They're very, very, very treasured, important people. They have an amazing, amazing story to tell. Why would you think it would be okay to erase them from stories unless you just hate them and you're using this as some sort of propaganda? But to even start to broach that topic opens the door to discussing cultural Marxism, Frankfurt School, anti-white globalist movement, and again, they'll be called far-right conspiracy theorists, which is gaslighting, for discussing the very obvious situation you see before you. And then they'll just get fired, which is pretty much the sum of everything. The useful idiots on the Marxists on Twitter will simply get anyone fired who disagrees with a woke show. The interviewer at comicbook.com didn't even bring up the most important issue: why they race swap the characters. Because what's the guy gonna say? Because this is cultural Marxism and we're using everything we can as propaganda. There's no good reason to race swap other than it's an act of hatred. They don't even bother to sit down and write something new because they know it. They know it wouldn't sell. These are demons in human skin. They can't create. As Tolkien himself said, evil can't create. Nothing they do. And people, YouTube had the the prequels for this, or the previews for this. And people put variations. They must have been running bots or something, because there were like 10,000 comments about the variations of evil can't create. Nothing they do connects with an audience because everything they write is basically just anti-white globalist propaganda. They might deny it, but they can't deny that their shows aren't selling. If more people were just honest like me and called these parasites out, they wouldn't make this stuff. They use pox as shields because they think people, and even this guy, Sanders, is pox himself. They think people won't criticize their cancer because woke Twitter will cancel them. But people are criticizing the race swapping, not the idea of pox making movies. Just simply write your own movie, make your own movie, start fresh. From you want to like, there's no shortage of if you want to tell African stories, it's like tell an African story based on there's like 10,000 tribes in Africa. You can tell, just pick one, pick up an area where it's cheap to film, go there and tell one of those stories. Oh, wait, we never thought of that. Yeah, instead they tell like their version of the Woman King, which you look at that and like, oh man, you guys are. If you make something like the Woman King, you're deep in an echo chamber, which people rightfully rejected. Anyway, on Twitter, you're not discussing this with people in good faith. You're talking to children or adults with childlike levels of maturity. There's almost no point in bothering to discuss it on Twitter. But to not see anyone in the media discuss it is pathetic. But I mean, they know which way the wind is blowing also. So he says in the interview that it's a challenge to present the story people want and also excite them. Except we don't want you to present the original. We just want you to present the original story. We don't want you to try to excite us, because you're not a master storyteller. It's like trying to cover Buckethead, as I've said, Buckethead versus Slash, you decide. Unless you can like surpass it's Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams did the same thing with the Star Wars. It's like we're trying to subvert expectations, but neither one of you is a master storyteller. Don't get me wrong, you're good in your own ways, but you're not masters like the original storyteller. The best thing you can do when you're a level below somebody is just try to tell their original story. Just get out of your way and let the story tell itself. And Abrams and Johnson are like, no, 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 we need to subvert. We need to subvert. It's like all you're doing is corrupting. Yeah, the expectations were that they would have a George Lucas story and it would be as close in vibe to the original. And you didn't give him that. You gave him this bizarre, bizarre Disney story. Anyway, Tolkien was a master storyteller. You're not Tolkien, so the hubris and pretending that you are, think you're going to improve on Tolkien makes no sense to us, and it makes us hate you, and you deserve the hate because you've destroyed this story and you destroyed a tremendous opportunity, and it might have cost you $700 million to $1 billion when this thing is all over. And I mean, the real trick will be, they said they are going to have 5 years of this thing come out. Are they going to go all 5 years? I don't know. Is Wheel of Time still on the air? Like, are they going to see Wheel of Time through the end? Like, oh, we've got five years budgeted out for Rings of Power. It's like, really? Are you going to get to season 3 and just maybe go, you know what? Like, I don't know how you cancel the show because it's such a big L for. I mean, like, you paid $250 million for the rights to the Silmarillion, or at least these specific pieces of it. You know what? They might just tell all five years of the show and just say, just have it out there, and hopefully people will watch it on Amazon Prime. It's like they already paid for it. They might, like, they paid $700 million for it, but by the end of it, it'll probably balloon to over $1 billion. It's like they might just keep making it and take the L. Oh, and something else ridiculous, which now that I think about it, there's kind of both sides to this thing, is in the Peter Jackson stories from 20 years ago, the orcs have yellow eyes, and they were mostly dark, but there were a couple of very fair orcs. So it's weird that the color did vary a little bit. It wasn't just all dark. But in the Rings of Power, the orcs are all fair, and they gave them blue eyes because the globalists, only blue-eyed people are evil because they have a narrative to push. But I will say in their defense take both sides of the argument, is that if the orcs are earlier time and it's a corruption from the blonde-haired, blue-eyed elves, then I guess that would be your defense, is that they're slowly being converted to the dark. Which is, even to say that's like, the funny thing is, in African mythology and storytelling, dark is still portrayed as evil because it doesn't, it's not your skin color, obviously in Africa, it's the night. For humans, the night is going to be a place of danger. So everyone uses the dark as something, as a negative. And it's like, it's like that's storytelling across the world. But for some reason now, it's like all this stuff is. So, I mean, like conversations you'd have, like videos discussing things, back in the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, you realize like, oh, people are not thick-skinned enough or mature enough to have these discussions without emotion. Like you see how, you want to see how emotional people get. There's a guy on YouTube, Door Love, who's some kind of preacher guy, and he's saying words, right? And you see the response of these demon people have to this guy saying words. They lose their freaking minds, and they're all adults, but they're adults with childlike levels of maturity. So the thing is, I've been saying this stuff about the blue-eyed thing for years. Follow me here. They really do hate you. The light-eyed people of the world, literally the people who wrote the story, the Englishman who wrote the story is no longer welcome in the story he created based on his understanding of European mythology and his life in a small village growing up. They can't create. Evil can't create. At this point, I think there might actually be a spiritual component. Like this is a battle between good and evil. Watching the original Fellowship of the Rings now, Rings of Power is an atrocity compared to this. Fellowship is a real movie. It connects to the people who come from the same spirit. To see Wheel of Times, Rings of, and it'd probably specifically be English or at least the UK, but it's kind of all of Europe. Watching the original show and then you compare it to this, it's like, to see Wheel of Times, Rings of Power, or what's the Game of Thrones spinoff, whatever other globalist cancer they come out with, and then to compare it to the original, it is shocking. But then again, I don't think the people who are working on the remakes have seen the originals, at least not in 20 years. It's like it's an over 12-hour commitment to watch the originals, which they should have done in one. They like everyone should have got together. The people who are working on Rings of Power, at a resort for like a weekend and just watched the original movies and studied them. Because when you put the truth to them and you ask, like, why aren't you guys just telling the original story? They don't have a good answer. If you love it so much, you would tell the original story. They don't love it. They just hate you. And obviously they hate the original story because an Englishman wrote it. The only value of the story to them is this propaganda. And once you see it, like you keep these templates in mind, like the hatred for people with green, blue eyes, fair features and light eyes. Like you keep that in mind. Oh, they're really protagonist, antagonist, and then you apply that template to it, and then globalism versus nationalism, and you apply that template to it, and you say, oh, I see now. I see what all these tinfoil hat people were saying. It's like as time goes on, it's less and less tinfoil hat. But like as time goes on, these conversations won't be had on YouTube. But anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.